Hey, so here's what I want to do. Just in our little bit of time together here, my goal for you here today is kind of to do two things. What we're gonna do is I want to talk about how to double your church in 2024, and there's basically two parts to this. Number one is the mindset. Number two is the tactics. Okay, so I'm going to teach you guys some tactics. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's actually working right now on social media and online with digital, that kind of stuff. But hear me when I say this, that the most important part is actually the mindset, right? So the thing that I would just encourage you guys to ask yourself today is, who do I need to become in order to be able to grow my church, right? And so when we say that, we talk about this idea of like an identity upgrade. Okay, so like a lot of times what'll happen, right, is people say, oh, man, I'm not good with text. I'm just not techie, so this stuff's not going to work for me, which I totally understand. But if there are people on the other side of your faithfulness, and you can learn a little bit about social, a little bit about your website, or a little bit about SEO, and that'll help you reach more people, and that'll ultimately make heaven more crowded. Wouldn't it be worth it to upgrade our identity a little bit and just say, I can learn a little bit about some tech stuff? All right, I was in youth ministry for 15 years. One of the things I did, I used to tell people all the time, I'd meet a kid and I'd be like, oh man, hey, what was your name? Johnny. Okay, cool. Hey, I'm probably gonna forget it. I'm terrible with names. I'll probably have to ask you again next week. And one day it just hit me and I was like, why would I just say that I'm terrible with names, right? And so I just started I would literally tell kids, and I was like, no, I'm great with names. I always remember kids' names. I remember where they're from. I remember what they do. And every time I see them, I'm able to recall their name and say it. And I would just start saying that to myself. And so when I'd meet kids, I'd be like, Johnny, great. I'm going to remember your name. Come back next week because I'm going to remember you, bro. Right? And they come back and be like, Johnny, my guy, wrestler from Sepulpa. That's what I'm talking about, bro. You wrestled 160, right? He'd be like, yeah. I'm like, man, my guy, good to see you, bro. And all of a sudden, it was like I flipped everything overnight because all I did was just upgrade my identity and just started saying, you know what? The thing that I used to consider a weakness, I'm now considering a strength, right? And I just started saying, and once I just said that and literally believed it, I became that. And I remember, my team will give me a hard time and laugh, whatever, because they're like, hey, do you know so-and-so? I was like, oh, yeah, Purpose Church. He was down there in McKinney, Texas, and they planted back in 2019. They're like, how do you remember that? I'm like, oh, we did a strategy call 4 years ago, right? And they're like, that's ridiculous, right? I didn't used to be good at that, but because I took on that identity, I just said, no, from now on, I know people's names. I remember where they're from. I remember what they do, right? It changed everything. So I would encourage you guys, as we're going to go through this, right? I'm going to teach you guys a little bit of the mindset, some of the stuff that I've learned that's worked at my church and some of the churches I've had a chance to work with. And we'll talk about the tactics, but the ultimate stuff that's actually going to change everything is going to be the mindset. So for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Chris Abbott. I have a couple of companies. One of them is called Church Marketing University, where we teach churches just how to use stuff like Facebook ads and SEO, website, Instagram, social, all that kind of stuff in order to get the word out about your church. And then we recently bought another company called Church Fuel, and that's actually kind of all the systems behind the scenes that help you actually be able to facilitate the church growth that you're seeing. So one of the things that we saw is we got really good over the years at helping churches get new visitors in the door, and they would start growing. But then all of a sudden what happens, they didn't have the systems in place to be able to facilitate that growth, right? And they started outkicking their coverage a little bit. I remember there was a church of 15 that came to me and said, Abbott, man, we got to grow. We've been 15 for the last 2 years. You got to help us. And I was like, yeah, great. So I built out these special type of Facebook ads that I like to create called prayer ads. And in 2 months, they went from 15 to 50, right? Just exploded. And all of a sudden, like, turn the ads off, bro. Like, we don't know what to do. We got to figure out how to disciple all these people, right? And I was like, man, there's 50 people. Like, I think we can figure out how to disciple them, right? Had another church of 20. They ended up praying, using those prayer ads. They prayed for almost 1,900 people in 5 months. 20 people, right? Prayed for almost 1,900 people in Atlanta in about 5 months. And they had 209 new families that planned to visit to their church, right? So they exploded. And the pastor was like, dude, we don't have a kids ministry. Like, we barely have worship. And then I preach. He's like, we don't even have a way for people to join the church, right? And I was like, and so what I started realizing is like, okay, it's not just church growth. It's not just new visitors. You actually have to have the systems behind the scenes in order to be able to facilitate that growth, right? So we bought a company called Church Fuel because I was like, man, I've never known that stuff. Like when I was on staff at my church, I just got everybody there. And then there was this girl named Katie who was amazing. She took care of everybody and got them assimilated and got them into a welcome party and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, great, right? So bought a company that specializes in that. So now we're in the midst of kind of putting those two companies together, creating a single sign-on. But been super blessed, got about 3,000 churches in our programs, and we've been having a lot of fun here. So, all right, let's kind of dive in. We're going to talk about how to double your church in 2024. Now, here's the things that I want to cover in the next 45 minutes. How to 2X your church by 10Xing your church. Mastering the hook in a 3-second world. We're going to talk about why trying to grow your church is actually keeping you from growing your church. Sounds counterintuitive, but we'll talk about that. What Star Wars has to do with new visitors, in case we have any Star Wars fans out there, and how a church of 20 people got 209 new families in only 5 months, which I just alluded to here a second ago. All right, so here's the first thing. There's a book out there called 10X is Easier Than 2X. I did not believe that. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to 10X anything, right? Any type of organization out there, try to 10X is easier than 2X. I've been reading this book and applying some of the principles, and I realized that, oh my gosh, this is one of the best books that I have read in a really, really long time. So I can't recommend it enough. It's by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He's an organizational psychologist. He talks about the psychology behind why all this is. But so here's the thing. If you're trying to 2X your church, right? I've been doing this with my business. I've been applying some of these principles with the churches that I work with. That you find out that 10X is actually than 2X. And here's the reason. 2X is about the past. Right? So if you want to double your church right now, right? Say you have 100 people in your church, right? And you want to 2X, you want to get to 200. That just means you look at it and you go, okay, well, how did we get to 100? Well, we've been doing these things. And if we want to double, we just need to do twice the amount of the things that we've been doing, right? And that seems to make sense. I did that in my business. We doubled our revenue year over year from last year to this year. And all we did was work a lot harder, right? Like we just did twice the amount of stuff we did last year. And I was on the edge of burnout here about a month ago. Like, okay, I need to go to the beach. I need to go to the mountains. Like something's got to change. Right? Like, because it's about the past. You look at what you've been doing in the past that works. And let's just do twice as much of that. And if you do, on the other end, you 2X your church. But you and your staff, probably your volunteers, might be on the verge of burnout. Right? So 2X is about the past, but 10X is about the future. Right? And here's the difference. Right? So if you want to 10X your church, right? Let's say you have 100 people and you say, okay, we want to have 1,000 people in our church. Well, first off, that seems impossible. Okay, impossible goals are my favorite kind. Secondly, you have to ask yourself, okay, what would we have to do in order to get to 1,000 people? If we're going to 10X our church, that's different than what you've been doing now. It's not like, let's do 10 times what we did last year. That's not going to work, right? So 10X is actually easier than 2X because it's actually, 2X is about doing more. 10X is actually about doing less, right? So you actually have to look at it, and if you want to 10X your church, you have to cut 80% of what you're doing. Right? If you guys know anything about Craig Rochelle and Life Church, I think they're like the largest church in the U.S. now. Have over 100,000 people. They've got a bunch of campuses in Tulsa, where I'm from, Oklahoma City, kind of all over the country. One of the interesting things about them, if you asked Craig Rochelle what he did to help get there, one of the biggest things they did was cut all of their ministries. Right? Like you look at it, they do 5 things. Right? And if I remember right, I think the 5 things, I think it's like weekend services. I think they do, it's like weekend services, kids, students, small groups, and volunteer teams. I think those are like the 5 things that they do, right? So it's like, you're like, hey, I'd love to get married here. They're like, we don't do weddings. It's like, what? You're a church, right? What church doesn't do weddings? They don't do funerals, right? They don't do like all the different things that you would normally think that a church does. They cut all of them. So like, hey, we're focusing too much on the stuff that doesn't actually grow the church, right? All these different things. And so they don't do marriage conferences. They don't do all these other things that people did. And I got looking at it, I was like, man, all the time I was in full-time ministry, we spent so much time doing all those things, right? And it took away from times we could spend working on other things. So when you're trying to 10X, a lot of it is you're actually just cutting out 80% of what you do to focus on the 20% of things that are working, right? So you have to actually ask yourself, what would we have to do? And here's a great way to do that, right? 10X is about the future, 2X is about the past. If you imagine your church, right? And like I've actually done this too, right? It sounds funny, but I promise it works. If you just get quiet before the Lord and you ask yourself, okay, what would it look like if I drove up to my church, right? If my church had 10X'd, right? And they're running 10 times what you guys are right now. If you pulled into the church, got out of your car, you walked in the front door, right? You walked into the office and you sat down with the future version of you, say, okay, how'd you do it? All right, what did you guys do to 10X the church? Right? And then just listen to what your future self has to say. Like I said, I know it sounds funny, but I tried this. I was driving in my truck. I was like, all right, Lord, what would I have to do, right? And I started, and instantly it started coming to me, right? Like instantly it was like, oh my gosh. And I realized a lot of the stuff that we're doing, we can't do it that way anymore, right? Like, so you're actually cutting the stuff in the past. It's about doing things. So one of the best ways to actually 2x your church is by trying to 10x your church. All right. Why does all of this matter, right? What we're talking about here today in the next few minutes. If you guys could show this picture here. This is a picture. The first time I saw this, I was actually in ministry. I think I was on staff at my church. That's a little kid going through chemo, right? And I think he's like 2 years old in this picture, and his sister's 4 or 5, and she's comforting him. I always get a little bit emotional when I see this picture, but the thing that hit me was I just thought, man, this family that is going through a storm, that is going through hell right now, they live within driving distance of someone's church. And it might be mine, right? Like, do they know that there's a church out there that can help them through this storm? Like, man, like, does the church know that they exist, right? Like, man, when you're going through stuff, the only thing that matters is community and family and having people in your corner. And I guarantee this family's on an island. And I just kept thinking, I was like, man, they're within driving distance of someone's church. That church probably doesn't know that they exist. They probably don't know that the church exists, right? I was like, and I bet you there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of families that are going through something like this that live within driving distance of our church, right? So here's one of the things. If you want to double your church, right, before you can significantly grow, you actually have to find your why. And when I say this, and I say this respectfully, please hear my heart on this, right? It's not about, well, like Jesus saved me and he changed my life. Don't get me wrong, that's awesome. Like, that's awesome, right? But like, man, for me, that picture perfectly embodies it, right? I'm like, that's why. Like, that's why I do what I do, right? Like, man, that's why I get up every single day and help churches and pastors and want to serve. Like, man, it's because we can reach people like that, right? So you have to like dig down deep and find out what your why, right? Because people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? So like, dude, like Pastor Tommy, man, what a stud, right? Dude, like just getting up here, like I love his passion for sneakers, right? Like that's so cool. I don't know if you guys like have seen that sneaker box. Like it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen, right? Like, like who thinks about putting like wrapping a book inside of like a sneaker box and doing this whole thing on sneaker culture? Like, man, so legit, right? Like when your passions come out, right, and you're sharing your why, it can change everything. All right, so I'm gonna talk about something here real quick, and then we'll start getting into some more of the nitty gritty, some more of the tactics. This is something called the Golden Circle. So there's a guy out there by the name of Simon Sinek, who is one of my favorite authors out there, and he teaches this, and I think this is gonna be kind of helpful. If you guys go to the next slide, let's show the Golden Circle. So every single organization on the planet knows what they do, right? We're a church. We know what we do. We have Sunday services or Saturday service, right? We know what it is. Every organization on the planet knows what they do, and these are the products or the services they sell or what we do as a church, right? So this is the outside of the circle, and this is where most people, most organizations, that's where they start from. They start from the outside, right? Hey, here is what we do. We sell widgets. We have church services, right? We're a nonprofit, whatever it is. Now, a couple of organizations on the planet actually know how they do it, right? And this is what makes them different, right? So the things that make you special or set you apart from the competition. For example, in the church, this is actually really tough because we all pretty much have Sunday services, and we all pretty much have worship and a really good word and those types of things, right? So what is it that makes you different? So great marketing, great messaging is when you should be able to say something about your church that nobody else in your city can say. So for example, I had a buddy of mine who was planting a church. Came up with a cool name. It was called Audacity Church. I was like, I love that name, right? And he had like all this like really cool reasons as to why it was going to be. I was like, oh man, I love it. And I said, okay, great. I said, man, he's like, can you help me with the launch, all the marketing? He's like, man, yeah, I'd love to. I said, okay. I said, man, so what's going to make Audacity Church different than every other church out there? He's like, man, it's going to be awesome. I was like, cool, a lot of churches are awesome, right? He said, man, we're going to have, dude, like the worship leaders we're bringing in are ridiculous. Like they've like recorded CDs and stuff. We're going to have great worship. I was like, man, it's awesome. A lot of churches have great worship. He's like, yeah, but this is going to be extra. I was like, so is everybody else, right? Like there's a lot of great recording artists, especially in Tulsa, right? There's a church on every corner. There's like 3 churches on every corner, and half the worship leaders there have recorded a CD. Like they're really good. They're really talented, right? So like, what else? He's like, man, we're going to preach the unfiltered word of God. And I was like, great. A lot of people do that. He's like, no, you don't understand. People water it down. We're not going to. Okay, right? But so there's a lot of people out there preaching a great word, right? So the church is awesome. You have awesome worship, and you have an awesome word. But what makes you different? What can you say about the church that nobody else can say, right? And he got a little bit frustrated with me. He's praying through some things. I remember, and finally, we kind of came up with an idea because he was really big on like serving the church. I think a lot of like what Pastor Tommy's talking about, right? Hey, let's get out. Let's not just be the church, or let's not just talk about church and have church. Let's actually be the church. And I said, okay. So we were talking about, I said, man, what if you put your money where your mouth is? And what if a couple times a year, you actually shut down the church? And instead of meeting as a church, you went out and decided to go be the church. And so they launched something they call Fifth Sunday. And so every time there's a fifth Sunday in the year, they actually don't meet. They shut down the church, and everybody meets at the church, and then they go to like a homeless shelter, right, and go like and go serve the homeless, or they'll go out to Habitat for Humanity and build a house, or go to a soup kitchen, right? And so what's interesting is he's the only church that I know of in the world that does something like that, right? On a Sunday morning, say, hey, we're not going to meet Sunday at 11. We're actually going to go out and serve the community. We're not going to meet as a church. We're going to go be the church. And the church has actually grown because of this. He's brought in a lot of millennials and Gen Zers because that speaks to who they are. And they're like, yes, we want to be a part of somebody that puts their money where their mouth is, right? So that's what happens when you can actually communicate your why, and you can communicate why it is what you do, right? That's when you start to change, and you start to have a footprint in your community that's different than everybody else, right? If you're saying something, and I'm not hating on any of this kind of messaging, but like, you know, I'll see a lot of websites. It's like, hey, we're saving a seat for you, which is awesome, but so is every single church in the city, right? Like everybody is saving a seat for them, right? They say like, welcome home, and I love that too. But again, that's kind of what everybody's saying. What can you say about your church that no other church could say, right? No other organization. We're not just competing with churches on Sunday morning, right? Like, I don't like to think about that as like competition, but we are competing with like sleeping in, right? Or we're competing with brunch, right? There's some places, there was one time I remember, this was like 10 years ago, my wife and I skipped church, I forget why. We skipped church and we went to brunch at Cheesecake Factory, and I was like, this is amazing. Do they have this every week? Is this what we've been missing? Oh my gosh, this is incredible. And they only have it on like Sundays, right? We're competing with all those types of things. And so communicating from your why is something that can help, like coming up with some messaging that's going to change everything. So here's an example of one of my favorite companies, Apple. All right, so you guys can do that next slide here. If Apple communicated like everyone else, here's what it would sound like. One more slide here. And this is so I love this. If Apple communicated like everybody else, they'd say, hey, we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Not really, right? Like, I'm pretty sure everybody can say that, right? That's if they sounded like everybody else, right? And they talk about they're communicating from what they do. We make great computers. All right, but go to the next slide. Here's how Apple actually communicates. They say in everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way that we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? Like, it hits different because what they do is they're actually starting with the why. They're still talking about what they do, right? They still make computers that are beautifully designed and simple to use, user-friendly. But when they talk about what they do, right, they talk about it after they talk about why they do it. Right? So what happens is when you talk about talk about your why, right, then other people buy into that. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Right? So people don't want to just come to church just because you're having church, but you start talking about what you're passionate about. You start talking about like your love for the city, or your love for restoring marriages, or helping people find family that are far from God, or whatever it is, right? All of a sudden it's like, man, like I guarantee if Pastor Tommy just started running some Facebook ads talking about how much he loves sneakers, like a bunch of sneakerheads would show up on Sunday, right? Like it's just, because people don't like just, oh man, like this guy's a pastor, but he loves sneakers. I love sneakers too, right? Like it's not easy, but it is simple, right? If you talk about what you believe, then you'll attract those who believe what you believe. Let me show you. This is if we can go to the next slide. Actually, two more here. One more. This is one of my favorite websites of all time. They recently changed it, which is still good. Let's go one more here. One more slide, please. There, thank you. Is it okay? So I think this is absolutely amazing. Okay, So these guys have dialed in their messaging. This is a church in Ohio. They say, you were born for adventure. You were born to make a difference, designed to partner with God to change the world for good. If that sounds like your type of adventure, Crossroads is your spiritual outfitter. Okay, so contrast this with we're saving a seat for you or welcome home or something like that, right? Like this, if you believe the same thing, right? You're like, I was born for adventure, right? Yeah, like I was born to make a difference. I was born to make a dent in the universe. And this pastor is talking to you. This church is saying, hey, you were born for adventure. Like, I was born for adventure, right? Like, all of a sudden, like, man, it's connecting on a level, and who else can say something like that? Who else is out there talking about that, right? And then this church, they have a bunch of stuff where they back it up, right? Like, you can see in the background, they have, like, man camp. They also have, like, woman camp, and they go out and they do all stuff, and they do all this, like, adventurous stuff, and that's just part of the DNA of their church, because that's what the pastor likes, right? Like, that's why he does what he does. And so he does it in the way that he loves doing it. Right? When I was a youth pastor, I was just figuring, I'm like, okay, what do I like doing that kids like doing? And I like camping, so I'd take kids camping. And I like when dudes all get together and play sports. So I would have dude nights on like Friday night from like 8 to midnight. And there'd be like 50 dudes that would show up to like play basketball and jungle pong and I don't know if you guys know Can Jam. Can Jam's a super cool, fun sport, right? Like, and we just like I had a bunch of cornhole boards made for the church because I like playing cornhole, right? Like, and like I would just invite kids to show up. Like, kids would show up 2 hours early before service just to play. Like, we got on this like Monopoly kick. We found this like electronic Monopoly. We don't have to like do all the paper money. It's like credit cards, like put it in a machine, and we played that for like 3 years. Like, legit, kids would show up and be like, oh, service doesn't start till 7, but it's 4:30. Here we go. Like, and like, man, and we'd cruise over there and grab some snacks in the snack shop and sit down and play Monopoly for hours. And then they'd stay late afterwards. Like, because it was just the stuff that I like doing. And so we just started doing that stuff. I liked playing Call of Duty. So we would have Call of Duty nights, and like dudes would come over and just spend the night at my house. My wife would go stay somewhere else so we could be loud and stay up all night long and drink IBC root beer out of the glass bottles because that's pretty cool. And we'd sit there and like play Call of Duty, and kids loved it, right? And we doubled the youth group because I just went all in on like the things I like doing. And those kids who like the same things and believe the same things, right, started becoming attracted to me. That's what happens when you start using messaging and you're speaking from your why. All right, I got to cruise through here so we kind of get into some of this stuff. So here's one of the things. I talk about Star Wars. If you go to the next slide, one of the things that they did is, notice they didn't talk about them as a church. They talked about you. Okay, and this is one of the best principles you can do is you're learning. This works on social. It works on your website. It works on invites. Anything that you're talking about. Don't talk about you, talk about them. All right, so you are not Luke Skywalker. You're not the hero of the story. Nobody cares that your church was planted in 1992 and that your pastor was from this seminary and went on to this place. Nobody cares, right? Like, people don't care that your dog died. They care that their dog died. So don't talk about you, talk about them. All right, so when we say, like, you're not Luke Skywalker, you're not the hero of the story, they are. So if they're Luke Skywalker and your church is Yoda, right? You are the guide. Notice that's exactly what they did in that last example, right? Hey, if that sounds like your type of adventure, then Crossroads is your spiritual outfitter, right? They're positioning themselves as the guide. Hey, you're the hero of the story. We can help you get there, right? Talk to me. You start doing stuff like that, I'm telling you, it changes everything, right? And you start hitting people, right? And they go, wait a second. And what's great is when they come in, like, man, it's like gravity, right? Like, they get sucked in and they can't leave because you're the only one that's speaking their language, right? Like, all right, so let me show this. I feel like this might be helpful. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to show you kind of an example of what not to do, and then an example that I wrote of kind of what I recommend. So I don't know if you guys can read that from back here, but I pulled this off an actual website, but I put bars over the guy's name because I don't want to embarrass anybody or the name of the church or that. So we'll call him Reverend Dr. George Smith. All right, so Reverend Dr. George Smith is the pastor of Blank Church in Blank City. He has faithfully served as a senior pastor since September 1996. He's certified in biblical counseling from the Christian Research and Development. He has a Bachelor of Science degree from Geneva College. In March of 1996, Pastor Smith was blessed by receiving an honorary doctorate from the Anglican Church of India for his mission work, evangelism, and church planting. Dr. Smith conducts several workshops for the equipping of men, right? Like, so I'll stop because we don't have a whole lot of time here. But you get it, right? Like, I mean, the last paragraph. Dr. Smith is a 2012 graduate of Palmer Theological Seminary with a Master of Divinity degree, and in November of 2015, he received his Doctor of Ministry degree. Nobody's coming to the church because of this page right here. And honestly, nobody cares, right? And I bet this guy's an amazing man of God, and like he's obviously got, like he's educated and done some incredible things, right? Way more than I have. But like this doesn't stir people's blood, right? Like this doesn't get them moving and like inspire them into something, right? Like because they're just talking about themselves, right? Like it has nothing to do with other people. All right, if we go to the next slide, here's something. Here's something that I wrote, just to kind of give an example of how I would recommend it. Can we go to the next slide, y'all? This is and so this is like specifically like an about page, right? Here's the deal. Your about page is not about you. It's not about your church. Your about page is about them. Do we have that next slide? If not, I can just kind of read it here. Water break, got a little something? All right, I'll just read it here. So what we do, the about page that I wrote, right, would have a picture of the pastor and just say, "Hi, my name is John." That's the only part that's about him. "Hi, my name is John. I believe that you are uniquely wired by God for a specific purpose, and then unless you figure out what that purpose is, you'll never be truly fulfilled. No one else on earth can fulfill the unique calling that God has for you. No one else can fulfill your assignment. Maybe you know exactly what your purpose is. Maybe you've been running from it for a while, or maybe you have absolutely no idea where to even start looking for it. But I want to help you find it, because I believe that the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who actually do." Okay, a little bit of a different tone, right? Like, literally, if you put something like this on your about page, all those people that are looking for identity and purpose and trying to figure out what to do, go, "Man, that's me. Like, I'm trying to find my purpose. I'm trying to figure it out." What better church to go to than a pastor whose purpose is helping you find yours, right? And that's what changed, right? So is this stuff kind of making sense, like some of these examples and stuff, y'all? Hope this is helpful, right? Like, we're just showing, like, this is the kind of stuff that when we're going out there and when we're talking about stuff, don't talk about you, talk about them, right? Like, man, no one cares that your dog died. They care that their dog died, right? So if we can talk about them, we can bring them in, then we can get them discipled, we can get them saved, baptized, plugged into a small group, serve team, right? But it kind of starts with the messaging that we're putting out. And by the way, like, these principles, these work for, everything, right? Facebook ads, your website, it's going to work for anything that you're going to put out there. Flyers, bring invitations. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about mastering the hook in a 3-second world. I'll share a couple more examples here in our time left here. So, mastering the hook in a 3-second world. We live in a world saturated with content, and the average attention span is only 3 seconds. Right? So standing out quickly is essential. A lot of us have probably heard this. If you've ever been to like a webinar or anybody talking about social media, right? You talk about stopping the scroll is one of the biggest things, right? And stopping the scroll is even kind of interesting now, right? Because stopping the scroll was when we had like Facebook and Instagram, and you're like actually just going through the feed, right? But now we've got Facebook stories and Instagram stories, right? Snapchat stories, which is where Instagram stole it from in the first place, right? Like then you've got TikTok, and you're going through like short form video, and then you've got the rise of Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, right? Like, and it's crazy, but if you know what you're doing, you can get a lot of people, you can invite a lot of people to church. My son is 11 years old, and he crushes my YouTube Shorts. So I have a YouTube channel talking about like church growth, Facebook ads, and plan your visit, and a bunch of these different things. And I have way more subscribers than he does, but like he started doing some YouTube Shorts and just started blowing it out of the water. Because all he does is he goes there and he just, like, he does what everyone is actually supposed to do, what we should all be doing, and none of us actually do. He posts like 6 to 10 videos a day, and most of them get like 2 views. And then one of them goes, poof, 6,000 views. He goes, "Oh, what did I do there?" And then he just goes and does it again. Like, he gets his images, he's really into soccer, plays competitive soccer. So he'll go like Messi versus Ronaldo, and he'll grab Google images of Messi and Ronaldo and put them into a YouTube short. And then he'll go out there and boom, it gets 6,000, 8,000, 9,000 views. And he goes, "Oh, wow, people like that." And then so he does, he'll be like, "Okay, let's try Mbappe versus Lewandowski." Poof, and it takes off again, right? And then he tries something else, and that one doesn't work. So then he goes, right? He just keeps throwing stuff out there and just keep trying things. It's the number one thing that you can do if you're trying to figure this out is just keep launching stuff. The problem is, and I say this with much respect, I believe that the church has been sold a lie about excellence. right? So I'll say, hey, we're not going to do that right now because we want to do that with excellence. We haven't launched our Instagram yet because, like we want to do everything with excellence, right? Well, that's great. While you're still trying to figure out like Facebook and Instagram, the game's already changed, right? TikTok's taken off. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I'm not going to launch TikTok till we really understand it. And then, because we want to do that with excellence. There's something I teach in church. Some of you guys may have heard this, right? It's the idea of plan your visit, right? Where someone can actually go on your website, sign up, and basically schedule an appointment to visit church on Sunday. So I've had churches literally bring me in, and I teach them this whole thing to the whole staff. We train everybody up. They go, okay, man, this is awesome, but here's the deal. Our church does everything with excellence. So, we're going to train and get ready for this, and then we're going to launch it in 3 months. And that's all until their face. I said, you'll never actually launch this. They're like, no, we're gonna do it. We're just gonna train everybody. I said, no, if you want to launch it, do it this Sunday. That's not enough time. I'm like, listen, all you need is friendly people, right? Just find your people, the people who have never met a stranger, right? I'm sure you guys can think about your church, and you can probably think about 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are just outgoing and friendly, and you just make them your plan your visit hosts, right? And then if somebody signs up for plan your visit, you just assign them to meet them at the front door and show them around, right? It's super easy. The problem is this whole idea of excellence keeps us from trying stuff, right? And we get this fear of failure, which most of us have in our lives anyway, and it bleeds over into the church, so we don't actually want to just try stuff. My daughter, I try to teach my kids, hey, here's the deal. I don't want to raise them to be employees. I want to raise them to be business owners, right? It's like, hey, it's fine to go flip burgers at McDonald's, but somebody's got to own the McDonald's, right? Might as well be you. And so both of my kids have started businesses in the last couple of years. My son went out and started selling drinks, right? It's super hot in Oklahoma, right? It gets up to 107, but the heat index 119. It's ridiculous. So he goes out to our neighborhood pool and he uses his own money, goes out and buys a pack of water and buys a bunch of Dr. Pepper and Mountain Dew and Pepsi and sells them for $1 a piece. And so we talked about, hey, here's what you got to understand. I'd push the water because the soda's great, right? But you're only making about 60 cents every single time you sell a soda. 40 cents of your own money went to go buy that, but you're making 96 cents whenever you sell a water because you only had to spend 4 cents to go buy that bottle of water. So he's done a really good job. He made he made $175 in the first 3 days. And I was just like, I worked at Applebee's when I was in college, and I made $30 a shift at Applebee's. I got sniffed so many times at Applebee's, and he just goes and just sells drinks for $1 a piece, makes $175, crushes it, right? So Zoe, my little daughter, she's 8 years old. She's like, okay, well, I see Chase is making a bunch of money. I want some of my own money too, Dad. I said, well, great. What are you going to do? Well, I think I can make friendship bracelets. Okay, great. How do you do that? She said, well, me and Anna, we can do, I'll call Anna. So she calls Anna. They come over, and she comes out. She's like, we made 200 friendship bracelets. I'm like, gosh, that sounds like it would take a long time, right? These little plastic friendship bracelets. Here's the great thing. Those little friendship bracelets are made of rubber bands or something. I don't know, all put together. They're all colorful. They look cool. She made me some, right? I was like, oh, this is awesome. But they cost half a penny to make. And so they sold them for $1. Now, here's the crazy thing is Chase was he was scared of going door to door because he was afraid that people would turn him down. So what he did was he set up at the pool, and everybody coming into the pool who was thirsty, he'd sell them a drink for $1. But Zoe and Anna are 8 years old and don't care, and they're super cute. So they just knocked on everybody's door and said, we're selling friendship bracelets. You want one for $1? And people will be like, you know what? I'll take 5. Here's a $5 bill. People will be like, you know what? I'll take 10. Here's a $20 bill. They made $275 in 3 days. And I was like, I have been doing it wrong my whole life, right? This is crazy. The only difference is, right, they both did something kind of cool, and they both had to overcome their fear of failure. But one of them was like, I'm just going to try. We'll hit as many houses as possible and make a ton of money, right? The only bummer is they still don't know about how to just keep going. So they're like, now we've got $175, $275. So then they just, take the next couple weeks off. Right? But we all need to have that same type of boldness and just try stuff, right? So I'm going to give you guys a 4-part framework here. We've got a few minutes left. I'm going to run through a 4-part framework for how to master the hook in a 3-second world. And I'll show you guys an example. And then we'll talk about a couple other just ideas, some tactical stuff that you can actually do that'll help you grow your church if you're looking for marketing and ways to get the word out. All right, so I got this 4-part framework from a guy named Eric Thane, who literally teaches this stuff. He's absolutely brilliant. So this isn't my stuff. I'm literally stealing it from him. But I thought it was worth sharing with you guys here. So, all right, if we go to the next slide, this is part 1. This is the hook. Okay, knowing that it's a 3-second world, people are scrolling, right? People are swiping. So you have to master that hook in a 3-second world. It's the most important part of your video, because if you don't master that part, nothing else will matter. I've had a lot of churches will go out there and put videos out on Facebook and Instagram and that kind of stuff, and it'll like start as a black screen, and it'll like fade up, right? Which is great in the sanctuary, but kills when you're on social media, because people just see a black screen and they keep on scrolling, right? So you want to start immediately with something. I had a video one time, I was like literally like, they're like, okay, go. And I was like, hey, what's up? Want to see a magic trick? And I did like a weird magic trick or whatever, right? Like, and it was like, and I was a little bit over the top and everything, but it's like, okay, we just need to slow the scroll and see if this happens. And for those people that don't have the sound on, which 80% of people on Facebook are actually watching the videos with the sound off, right? So it's good to have subtitles and to try to do something to communicate your message, right? And they just saw like a little magic trick, which was dumb and super easy, right? And then I was like, hey, I want to invite you guys out to Easter Sunday this Easter, right? And we ended up getting hundreds of thousands of views on that stupid video, right? It was just me doing a magic trick. I'm not even good at magic, right? Like, but it was just something that stopped the scroll, and I shot it with an iPhone while everybody else was like, okay, man, we're going to shoot it with a red camera, and we're going to do it here in the studio with the green screen, and nobody ever saw the video that you spent all this time and money on. But people will watch a video that was shot on an iPhone that's done where it jumps straight into it if you have the right hook. So here are just a couple of ideas for a hook, right? So you can start off with like, hey, the number one secret to blank is blank, right? Like the number one secret to parenting is blank, right? Like if you guys are parenting experts, let me know. I have no idea what the number one secret to parenting is. Still trying to figure it out myself. But if you know, right, this is actually one of the things that a lot of the videos that go viral from churches happen to be about parenting, right? It's a little bit of a hack. So a lot of parents out there, everybody's looking for help. Here's how to blank, right? You're just going to teach them how to do something. If you're struggling with blank, this is your problem. Did you know, right, how to blank without blank? I love this. I've actually used this before, like in webinars, like, oh, how to grow your church, how to double your church without, knocking on doors, begging your congregation to invite, or wasting your money on direct mail, right? It's just how to blank, how to do something you want without blank, like something you hate. How to lose weight without cutting out pizza, right? Something like that. So a couple more, right? This is probably going to ruffle some feathers. Everything you know about blank is wrong. Here are 3 tips to blank, right? Here's one simple hack. Don't make this mistake. Here's the secret to blank, right? You have to get something. It's got to be a hook, and it's got to be right there in those first couple seconds, right? You should just immediately, even if you shoot it on your phone, right? A lot of times, like, you'll start on a phone, and you'll be sitting there, and you're like, hey, here's the number one secret to, right? Like, cut out that little bit of the beginning so that as soon as people see it, here's the number one secret to blank. All right, so the part 2 is the story, right? So this is where you're going to tell people what you're about to say, and you're talking about how important it is. So without your story, right, your content has no meaning, and your audience won't take it seriously. Stories are also a really great way to get people to keep watching, because once our brains get into a story, right, it opens up a loop, and we have to finish it. Okay, so here are a couple of prompts that you can do for a story idea, right? Hey, so a few weeks ago, right, I was doing this. Too many people do blank when they should do blank. I used to use this when I was in youth ministry. One of the things I used to do is I would sit there. If I told my kids, I'm like, hey, just so you guys know, I'm a sniper with a Nerf gun, and if I see you talking, I will shoot you directly in the face. And what was cool is like I could actually do it, right? Like everybody in here, I could shoot you directly in the face with a Nerf dart if I wanted to. Like I spent a lot of time playing that like with youth kids, and we got really, really good. What I found though is I would do it, right? So like a kid would be talking, and I was really good too. I could keep talking. I'd already have the Nerf gun loaded. I'd just pick it up off the podium, and like boom, I could shoot Bradley in the forehead and keep going. What I found though was I would shoot Bradley in the forehead, and then everybody would laugh, and then it took like 5 minutes to get everybody's attention. So I was like, okay. While that is funny and a lot of fun, it didn't really work to get people's attention, right? So what I started doing was I found that if I just started telling a story, if I was losing everybody, I could just start telling a story immediately, right? And everybody, like my wife's like 4'11", she's like this brunette bombshell, absolutely amazing. She's from like this small little town in Missouri where there's like more cows than people, right? Like if you guys know those kind of towns. And she was awesome, but she also like, she could throw a football better than like any football player. So like this tiny little girl would walk up to these big, huge football players and be like, hey, you throw like a girl, let me see that. And then would like throw a spiral all the way across the gym, and they'd be like, what the heck? And then she'd be able to start talking to them, and they loved her immediately. So everybody loves Rach. So all I would have to do is just start telling a story about Rachel, and everyone, even if they're flirting with their girlfriend, even if they're texting, whatever they're doing, I was like, okay, so a couple days ago, Rach and I were at the mall, and everybody's head pops up, right? It's because a story immediately engages everybody, right? And then once you start a story, you can't stop in the middle of it. That's why we all hate like leaving. If you're in like a really good movie, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. I shouldn't have got the large soda with the large popcorn. But like, gotta find out what's happening, right? Because you're in the story and you don't want to stop. So this is a great way to get people to watch all the way to the end of your video. So here's a couple. For the sake of time, I'm going to kind of fly through some of this. Part 3 is where you're going to share like 3 secrets or tips in the video. Now, this works great just so we're like Instagram stories, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, right? The rise of short form video is crushing online right now with organic. And so this is the best way to kind of stand out is by using a framework like this to do a bunch of short form videos. And I would recommend doing as many as possible and just throwing it out there and seeing what could work. All right, so you want to give them 3 secrets or tips that can help them get the result that they're looking for, and they have to be short, right? Like this whole thing should be less than 60 seconds, so you got to be flying. All right, and then finally, part 4 is you want to have an offer or a call to action, right? So you want to make sure that all of your videos end with some type of next step, right? So without it, it just kind of feels like you just teach them about parenting or about marriage or something like that or whatever it is, or you share like a Bible verse, and then it's like, and then it just ends, and you're like, that's awkward, right? But if you invite them to do something, right? So maybe you're saying, hey, one of the things that you need to do is you need to pray with your spouse every single day, right? Here's 3 tips for how to do that, right? Number 1, do it every single day. Number 2, never pray for more than 1 minute, and number 3, never let a day go by that you don't pray, right? Which 1 and 3 are basically the same. So it's like, okay, great. So then you go in there, and at the end, you can just be like, okay, so here's a challenge. Every day for the next 7 days, pray for your spouse, right? You have to pray either in the morning when you first wake up or at night right before you go to bed. Here's the rule. You're not allowed to pray for more than 60 seconds. Okay, go, right? And so all of a sudden, like at least now there's a call to action. There's a next step. And what's cool is if you start doing that, right, you remember the pastor that actually taught that to you. So you can invite them to do the thing you just talked about. You can tell them, hey, follow for more, right? Follow for more tips, follow for more, like and subscribe. Hit the link in my bio to get access to, maybe you put together like a marriage cheat sheet or a parenting cheat sheet or something like that, which that's a great thing to do because now you're just building up an email list of people that you've been helping and building value with, and you can invite them to church. You can tell them, hey, go to mychurch.com to get blank, right? Comment some word below, right? And I'll send you whatever it is, or DM me, and I'll show you how to do this thing, or I'll give you this thing, right? So these are all great ways. So here's just kind of putting it all together. Here's an example. I've got 4 minutes, so we'll fly through this real quick, right? I just kind of took all those things, right? Part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4, put it all together and did an example, right? So for me, I talk about church growth a lot, right? So you could say something like this. The number 1 secret to growing your church is not trying to grow your church. Instead, focus on the thing that will result in church growth, okay? So that's the hook right up front. So I know this might sound crazy. That's step 2, using that going into a story. So I know this might sound crazy, but back in the 90s, one of the fastest growing churches in the country was a church in the Midwest where the pastor would spend his Friday and Saturday nights praying for people at a gas station and then invite them to church. Their church grew so fast they got featured on MTV and in Rolling Stone magazine. So I decided to try this at my church, but instead of a gas station, I posted on Facebook asking people how I could pray for them. In the first month, I prayed for 549 people, and 86 of them decided to visit our church. Here's how you can do the same thing. Step 1, run a simple Facebook ad asking people how you can pray for them. Step 2, send them an audio prayer and of you praying for them personally. Step 3, invite them to church. I put together a free cheat sheet walking you through how to use prayer ads and something I call the Ministry 10X Effect Framework to grow your church. Click on the link in my bio to download it for free. Now, I don't know how long that was. Hopefully it's less than 60 seconds. If I recorded it and I found out, hey, it's actually 75 seconds, I would cut out a little bit in the middle and I'd go a little bit faster, right? But you try a video like that and then you see how it works, right? And for me, I kind of believe in the shotgun approach. I believe that you should post that on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts and everything out there and just see what happens, right? Worst case scenario, you just do another one, right? So is this kind of making sense? How I know we're going kind of fast here, but with the YouTube Shorts, kind of that short form video. All right, so we'll do this, and then I've got a couple more ideas that I'll do, and then we'll wrap up. So one of the things I get asked a lot about is why people in our church don't share the posts in our church, right? I don't know if you guys have ever had that problem before. It's like, hey, you post about your baptisms and baby dedications, but nobody likes, nobody comments, nobody shares. So there's 2 reasons. Number 1, Facebook shows your organic posts to less than 3% of the people that like your page, right? So if you have 1,000 people that like your page and you post on there about baptisms and baby dedications, out of those 1,000 people who like your page, Facebook shows it to about 30 of them, right? That's why you're like, oh, we have 1,000 people, but we've got 6 likes on here. Like, what the heck, right? And then what Facebook does, their algorithm rewards you. If a bunch of people start liking and commenting right away, then they'll start showing it organically to more people, right? Still not a crazy amount, not everybody, but they'll start showing it to more. If they don't, they won't show it anymore, right? So that post just basically dies. So one of the things you can do that's going to help is whenever you're posting something really, really important, you can actually have like your team ready. We actually do this like my team. Whenever we're posting something about like a new webinar or a class that we're doing, a new resource that we put out for free, we'll literally just tell the whole team, hey guys, at 10:15 today, Central Time, we're going to post. Make sure to go in there, like, comment, and share that post, right? And then I've got 27 people that work for me. So we get up there and we say, okay, go. And we post it. And then we literally email out a link to every single person so they all see it. They click on the link, they go there, and they like, comment, and share. And then Facebook goes, whoa, look how many people like, commented, and shared in the first 5 minutes. This must be really good content. And then they show it out to a bunch more people for free organically. The second thing, the last thing I'll share with you as far as this goes is the reason that people aren't, right? And that's a tactic that'll work sometimes. You can't do that every single day. The reason that people aren't sharing your stuff is because of social currency, right? So basically, people share stuff online that makes them look good, look cool, or look like they're in the know, right? So if I go out there, right, and this is why, like, you guys, everybody, one of us probably has a friend who like sends us like 1 million posts or memes or something. I have like a buddy of mine that like I literally cannot watch football with because while I'm trying to watch the game, he will literally tap me every 30 seconds like, bro, and he'll show me like an Instagram post. And I'm like, we're watching the game, man. Like, what are you doing on Instagram? Like, and I don't care. And then every once in a while I laugh, so then he thinks I should show him more, right? It's like, oh, gosh darn it, right? But the reason he's doing that, right, is if he makes me laugh, it makes him feel good. Now he feels like, oh, I'm in the know, right? So if you're posting about your baptisms and baby dedications, nobody in your congregation goes, oh my gosh, if I share that with my friends and family, will it make me look cool? No. Will it make me look in the know? Not really, right? And so it's just like, okay, what is it? It's social currency because it doesn't make them look good. They're not sharing your stuff. But we did this in my church one time. We're like, hey, we're going to have a small trunk or treat. Abbott, we need you to post this. Don't run any Facebook ads. Don't promote it. Just post it on the page just so like the people in our church know about it because we did a big Halloween outreach kind of thing. So this was more just, hey, just for our people. Okay, great. So go in there, post about trunk or treat, right? All the different stuff we're going to have, the candy, the Halloween contest, the costume contest, all that different stuff, right? And we posted out there and it like went viral. Like ended up having like 2,000 shares. And like all these like thousands of likes, all kind of stuff. And when we showed up that night, I think we were prepared for like 500 people. We ended up having like over 2,000. And it was like literally like wrapped all the way down the block and down the street. Like this like line of people like to get into the trunk or treat and start going. And everyone starts yelling at me. They're like, Abbott, we told you not to promote this. I'm like, I didn't. It was an organic post that performed way better than when we spend hundreds of dollars on a Facebook post. And the reason is because it made people look cool, right? Like if you have kids, right? And I share on my page about this like really cool trunk or treat that's gonna have costume contests. Your kids are gonna love it. It's gonna be amazing, all these different things. And you see it and you're like, dude, that's awesome. And then you take your kids there and have a good time. Then you're like texting me like, Abbo, dude, thanks so much. That trunk or treat thing was off the hook. My kids had so much fun. Bro, that's awesome, right? So like in my brain, I'm like, okay, whenever I see things like this, I should share it with my friends, right? But you know, the new sermon series comes up, and if it doesn't speak to me and it's not gonna make me look cool, I'm not gonna share it on social. Right? And so that's what happens like when people aren't sharing. So you have to write your posts in a way, right? Not about you, make it about them, and write it in a way that's going to make people look good whenever they share it. This is the last thing I'll just kind of hit this as a shotgun because I'm out of time here. But a couple of church growth ideas that have worked really, really well for me and for the churches that I've been blessed enough to work with. Facebook and Instagram ads are some of the I think it's the best ad spend on the internet in my personal opinion. Because you can target everyone within driving distance of your church and invite them out to church. And a lot of times, the amount of visitors, I'd say 99.9% of the time, the amount of visitors that you have on Sunday is equal to the amount of invites that you had that week, right? So like if you go out and you invite 100 people to church, 10 of them might show up. If you invite 1,000 people to church, 100 of them might show up. If you invite 10,000, you're going to have to get more chairs. You might have to launch a second service, right? It literally just comes down to a lot of times to just the numbers game and the amount of invites. And so one of the best way to get more invites in front of people is Facebook and Instagram ads. I break them up into 3 different categories. One's an invite ad where you're literally just inviting people to come to church. And I usually give them a call to action like, hey, Click on the link below, and you can plan a visit on the next page. And if you do, we'll meet you at the front door, help you get your kids checked into kids' church. We'll get you some free coffee. We'll save seats for you in service, give you a tour of the building, and we'll make sure that you have a chance to meet Pastor Bill. That last one is really important because 80% of first-time visitors who meet the pastor on the first visit will come back for a second visit. 80% of people who meet the pastor on the first visit will come back for a second visit. So if nothing else, just make sure all your visitors have a chance to meet the senior pastor the first time they come to church. Google Grant is a great one. Google has a program. If you're a church, right, you have a 501c3, they have a program where they'll give you $10,000 a month in free Google ads, and it just resets every month. So it's literally $120,000 a year in free Google ads that you can use to invite people to church. Plan your visit is huge. I've got a bunch of YouTube videos if you guys want to learn a little bit more about that and kind of my framework for that. A welcome party. One of the things I've realized is a lot of people have membership classes, right? But nobody wants to go to a class. Everybody wants to go to a party. So even if you do the exact same thing you're doing right now, but you change your membership class, right? Or we used to have like 101, 201, 301. Again, that's a class, right? But if you just change it to a welcome party and you're inviting everybody out to a welcome party or a party with the pastor, right? Like people want to come to that, and you'll actually see the attendance go up because nobody wants to go to class. Everyone wants to go to a party. Fill the fridge is a really cool one where literally you just go out and fill the fridge. Go to like a local elementary school once a month. Go in there and just fill the fridge full of like great drinks and snacks and stuff like that just to serve the teachers. Teachers will start talking. They'll talk to other parents, right? And especially if you're trying to reach parents of like young families with elementary school age kids, fill the fridge is a great way to do it because they'll just start talking. Buzz will start, and just because you're going out there and just serving those teachers. And then the last one is a Monday morning selfie video. I give props to Pastor Tommy because he has been doing this for a couple of years now since I talked to him about this. And literally, all it is you just take all the Connect cards from everybody that came to church for the first time on Sunday. And on Monday, preferably you as the senior pastor. If you have to outsource it to somebody else, you can, but it's best if it's the pastor, right? You just take a video and you record a quick 60-second video, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, just thanking that person for coming to church, inviting them back the second week, right? Like the number of people who join your church go up exponentially if they come back 2 Sundays in a row, right? It's something like it goes from like 10% of people who visit once will join your church, right? But it goes up to like 40% if they come 2 Sundays in a row, and it goes up to like 90% if they come 3 Sundays in a row, right? So you just send a Monday morning selfie video. If you had 10 new visitors, it'll probably take you 10 minutes, right? And then you just text it to that person, right? And say like, hey, John and Sarah, I made a quick video for you. Thanks so much for coming yesterday, right? Like, and now they're watching that video, right? And you're like, hey, what's up, John? Man, this is Pastor Chris. Hey, listen, thank you guys so much for coming to church. Man, had a blast getting to know you guys. Man, I hope your kids had a great time back in kids' church and everything. Man, I just want to thank you so much for coming out. I really did enjoy meeting you guys. And I tell you what, we're doing it again next Sunday. Man, same time, same place, 10 o'clock. Can you make it? Right? And you end it with an invite and a question. Can you make it? Now you've opened a loop, and they'll feel on the hook to respond and either say, yes, we can come back, or no, Johnny has a soccer tournament, but we'll be there the following Sunday, whatever it is, right? But like this one thing has helped, has probably done more for retention in our church than some of the churches I've worked with more than anything else, just because the personal video from the pastor, and you'll be shocked at the responses that you get whenever you start putting out that Monday morning selfie video. So, all right, I'm way over time. So thank you guys so much. My name is Chris Abbott. Oh, last thing, if you want, I'm gonna upload my slide deck. Have my team do this here later today. But if you want my slide deck and top 10 church growth resources we put together, you can just text the word free to the number on the screen, 417-204-5153. And then you get access to our top 10 church growth resources. And give me a day or two, and I'll have my team upload my slide deck in there in case you want to use any of that as well. So, again, my name is Chris Abbott. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.